The first thing we need to do is plot our point, which is -3, -4. So that would be left and down. So I'm not going to be too precise about it. I'm just going to put a point in the third quadrant, and I'm going to label it -3, -4. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our right triangle. So we're going to create two segments. The first one is going to connect the point to the origin, and the second one is going to connect the point to the x-axis. So I'm going to go straight up, and that forms our right angle to make our right triangle. So this right here, our angle theta, will always be the angle that is at the origin. All right, so now I was given a point. That point represents an x and a y coordinate. So if I'm labeling the sides of my triangle, the distance that I go to the left would be my x coordinate, so -3, and then the distance that I go down to the point would be my y coordinate, which is -4. The next thing we need to do is figure out what is the length of the hypotenuse, and in order to do that, we're going to use our Pythagorean theorem. Now, the Pythagorean theorem we're going to use is a little different than the one that you're used to seeing. We're going to use kind of a shorthand version of it, which looks like this. And that's going to allow us to immediately solve for our missing side length. So I'm going to write my numbers. Remember that because these are negative numbers, I have to put them in parentheses. So this would be -3 squared plus parentheses -4 squared. All right, so -3 squared is +9. -4 squared is +16. If you add 9 plus 16, you get 25. And the square root of 25 is 5. So that is the hypotenuse of our triangle. Okay, so the next thing we need to talk about is which side represents which letter, which we kind of have, but I want to make it really clear. So R is 5, that's what we just figured out. X is -3, and Y is -4. And the reason that it's really important to know that is because over here, when we're going to fill in our trig functions, we need to know what all of those ratios are. So I'm going to go through each one before we do anything with numbers, and I'm going to write out what the ratios are. And these are things that you need to commit to memory. So if you don't have it memorized yet, that's okay, but it needs to be memorized eventually. Okay, so sine is y over r, cosine is x over r, tangent is y over x, and then the other three are just reciprocals. What that means is you just take the ratio for, like for cosecant, we're going to take the ratio for sine and we're just going to flip it upside down, so it becomes r over y. Cosine is r over x, and then I think I said that backwards. Secant is r over x, cosecant is r over y, and then cotangent is x over y. So now that I know what those ratios are, I can actually figure out what my numbers are. So I'm going to go back to my triangle. Y is -4, and r is 5. So the ratio for sine is -4 over 5. For cosine, I need x over r. X is -3, r is 5. So that's my ratio for cosine. For tangent, I need y, which is -4, over x, which is -3. Since I have two negatives, they cancel each other out. My final answer would actually be +4 over 3. So if you can reduce your numbers, you should. And then the other three are going to be really easy because all I have to do is take my final answers for the previous three and flip them. So if I flipped sine, it would be -5 over 4. The negative usually stays either just out in front or you put it with the top number, or it looks like that anyway. We usually don't write a fraction where your negative is in the denominator. For secant, it would be -5 over 3. And then for tangent, it would be +3 over 4.